All right, we are going to go ahead and work on multiplying fractions. This is lesson 21 of module 4. So we're going to do some models and multiplying fractions, and then also converting to decimals. Okay, so we're going to start off with 2 over 2. So 2 halves of 3/4. And we're going to go ahead and draw the model first. And the model will be 1 as the whole. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to focus on 3/4 first, right? Whatever we're finding the fraction of, we are going to draw this fraction as a model first. So we're going to go ahead and split this into fourths. And we're going to shade 3 of them, right? Because we've got 3/4. So 3/4. And then we're going to look here at the denominator. We're looking at 2. So we're going to have to split this into 2 parts going the other way. And we're going to shade 2 of them, right? We're going to shade 2 out of the 2 parts. So that means we're going to have to shade this way, right? And we're going to look for the overlap. Sorry, I should be using colors, but I'm not. And then we're looking at how many parts total we have. So we have 8 parts total. And then we're looking at what parts are overlapping. So that's 6 out of 8. And then you could simplify. Now, we have to convert this to a decimal. And so if we're doing 6 over 8 as a decimal, we can't really do that because in decimal format, right, you've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths, right? So you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and so on. But in order to write it straight into a decimal, you need to have a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. We don't have that here. So there's some ways to get to this denominator. One thing we could do, and I'm thinking of money and quarters. So if we divide this by 2 over 2, and we simplify to 3/4. So now we're actually going to need to multiply by a fraction that is equivalent to 1 so that we get the denominator to be 10, 100, or 1,000. So 4 times something could get us to a denominator of one of these. And so if I did 4 times, and don't forget it needs to be an equivalent fraction. So this needs to be equivalent to 1. So if we multiplied by 25 over 25, I'm thinking like quarters, then that would give us 3 times 25 is 75 over 100. So we multiplied the fraction, we got the answer. We simplified it to a place where we know then we can multiply it to something by something else in order to get to that 100 in the denominator. So there's a few steps here. Now we have 75 hundredths, and we know that if we have hundredths, then we can write it out as a decimal, right? Tenths, hundredths. The 5 goes in the hundredths place, and then you have your 7 there. So it's 75 hundredths. All right. Let's try another one. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply the fractions, and then we are going to convert to a decimal. So let's go ahead and do 1/5 times 2 halves. Okay, you're welcome, because this is pretty easy. So we're going to multiply straight across. We get 2 tenths. And right away we know we've got tenths, so we can convert straight to a decimal. So we've got 2 tenths. What if I wanted to write 1/4, and this isn't even a multiplication problem, if I wanted to write 1/4 as a decimal? Well, again, we need a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, and we already know from up in the last problem we could multiply by 25 over 25 to get 100. And we know that multiplying 25 over 25 is the same thing as multiplying by 1. We're getting an equivalent fraction. We're not changing this at all, but we're getting the equivalent so that we can write it in decimal form. And then you're going to multiply straight across. That gives us 25 hundredths. And just like the last one, you can write it in decimal form. What if I wanted to write 1/4 as a decimal, but in the, if I wanted to do it in thousandths? Okay, so I'm writing 1/4 as thousandths. So how could we do that? Well, we know 4 times 25 is 100. So then 4 times what could be 1,000? So 4 times 250 would give us 250, and 4 times 250 is 1,000, right? 250 times 2 is 500, and then so times 2 would be 1,000. So 250 thousandths, and then tenths, hundredths, thousandths. That 0 goes there, 5, 2. Okay. Next one. Getting a little trickier here. So we are going to express 1/8 as a decimal. So, let's think here. What can we multiply by in order to get tenths, hundredths, or thousandths? So we have to think here. You can't do 10, right? 8 times, you can't do 8 times whatever to get 10. And can you do 8 times something to get to 100? No. But can we do 8 times something to get 1,000? So here's what I would do. So you've got, if you're trying to figure out 100 divided by 8, right? If we want to try to get hundredths, we'll do 100 divided by 8. This goes in 2, 8, 2, 20, and then 2. So it's 22 and something, right? So you've got 16, and you have a remainder of 4. So that doesn't go in evenly. But does it go in evenly into 1,000? Let's try it out. So 8 and 10 goes 2. I'm sorry, 8 into 10 goes 1. Subtract, you get 2, bring down the 0. You've got 2 here. 16, subtract. Sorry guys, my camera stopped recording. So I finished off this long division problem, and it did go in evenly. 8 went into 1,125 times. And so as a result, we know then that we can multiply 1/8 by 125 over 125, and that will give us 125 thousandths. And now that we have this, we can write it into decimal form. You've got tenths, hundredths, thousandths. Write the 5 in the thousandths place and then work backwards. So you have 125 thousandths as your answer. The next problem, we've got 6/25. So now if you want to convert that to a decimal, you want to think of 25ths as like quarters, right? So there's 4 quarters and $1. So if we multiply this 25 by 4, we'll get 100, right? So we'll multiply 4 over 4 and get 24 hundredths. And then we can just convert that straight into a decimal, which would be 0.24. That's pretty much the whole lesson. Some of the numbers get a little bit bigger, but the whole goal, again, is to look for tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and so on, in order to convert to a decimal. All right, enjoy. Have fun doing the problem set.